Hi, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing a reassembly video here on a vintage Shimano custom X1000 ultralight special ball bearing reels. So as you can see, it's all been taken apart. I did that in a separate disassembly video. You can check that out on the YouTube. But we have a clean housing here to start with, and so that's always a good deal. And we're just going to get right back into it. You know, we've been cleaning with some Purple Power degreaser, a little bit of WD-40, Q-tips, toothbrushes and whatnot, some 4.0 steel wool. So we're going to start here with our drag stack here. So we've cleaned this chamber out really well, our rear drag chamber. And we're going to start with putting our spacer washer back into position here. I usually make use of little precision screwdrivers such as this one to kind of help guide everything back into position here, more or less. Yeah, I've been cranking out these ultralight reels that I personally own lately because, frankly, I want to take them trout fishing. These are my go-to reels anytime I go ultralight trout fishing in streams and whatnot, and they're solid. I like them. They're not too difficult to work on once you know the mechanics of them. So we've got a ratchet wheel. That's got to go on next. Okay. I do recommend downloading schematics. You know, if you have this reel and you want to work on it like we're doing right now, schematics are usually very helpful because there's just so many different little pieces and parts, and they're very small on these reels. Very, very small. Got a keyed washer that goes in next. And then we've got a rubber washer, and I have changed out these rubber washers before. Well worth doing if you can find them over time. You know, they do wear out. And then we've got just a regular metal washer that goes on next. And then this is actually a fabric washer, and I don't bother lubricating this too much. You know, as you can see, this one is getting close to needing to be replaced, and so you know, but the oil in the reel eventually does seep down into the drag stack, not because we want it to be there necessarily, but it's just the nature of rear drag systems. So that's not an unusual thing really at all. But we're going to put that in there. And then we got two keyed washers to top it off with here. Get those keys to line up though just right. There we are. And then another one. Okay, then we got a spring. And we got our cap here. Now, before you put this on, there are two small, thin washers. There's like a Teflon washer and then a metal washer. Teflon goes in first and then the metal on top of it. And we're gonna thread this back in like so. And then you just want to get it to the point where it's just starting to tighten up. Okay, and then we're gonna have a look here at our wheel. Make sure that there isn't any sand or debris caught up in there. That's usually a popular place for that kind of stuff to get trapped in. Okay, now a lot of these drag reels, they all pretty much work the same, but sometimes you have to maneuver them a little differently. So this one goes 0 to 10, you know, for max drag. All right, but what we want to do is we want to set this up in a fashion where we're going to be able to go primarily to 10, or at least 9 in this case. It's pretty tight right there. And it's all dependent on the thickness of those drags and what kind of shape they're in and stuff like that. You know, that rubber washer that I was talking about is relatively new. So we're going to put this in here, and we're going to roll with that. Okay. All right, so now we're ready to have a look at these pieces and parts here. All right, so we've got our main bearing. Okay, we've cleaned it out with some WD-40. You can see that the bearings are exposed here. When you go to put this back in, you want to make sure that the seal is facing upright towards you, right? And that prevents and protects the bearings from sand and dirt, you know, any of the elements basically. All right, but we do want to flood these bearings with a little bit of Real-X oil. Okay, so we're going to put that in there. And while we're at it, we're also going to hit our dog and dog spring here and anti-reverse lever with a little bit of Real-X oil as well. Just a little bead goes a long way. You don't need to do a lot with these. Okay, so we've cleaned up our pinion gear. We're going to start with that now. And we're going to take a little bit of blue grease. Tip, okay, keep the grease on the gear teeth on here. Don't let it travel up the shaft here. And the reason why is because the plastic retainer ring here, which is actually part of the anti-reverse system here, more or less, it'll get caught. Your dog will get caught in between the retainer here, and it'll start making weird clicking sounds and stuff if that grease travels upright. All right, now this is, typically going to be facing down. You wouldn't have the reel upside down when you're using it or anything like that. Okay, but what I do find myself doing is I'll take just a little bit of that Real-X oil to this area here where that plastic ring rests. Okay, and that will help ensure that you have a good system set up so that it can easily slide back and forth. And I'll show you a little bit more about how that works here. All right, so that ring goes on, and that tab here where I'm pointing, that needs to hit the back of the reel housing in this corner. Okay, and so it has to be set up just right and just properly in order for it to function. And then we've got our ramp here, and then there's this bushing as well. Okay, now normally these all work a little differently in terms of clearance, but sometimes you can get by with just putting those pieces in like that and sliding them back in, and then you can take this little bushing and slide that back down on top, and then take your bearing and go down with that. I also like to just put just a little bit of oil here on the outside of the bearing just to prevent any rust damage that could occur. Okay, so you set the bearing flat like that. Okay, you double check your work and make sure that that plastic ring is where it should be and all these pieces and parts here. And then we're going to pull it upright gently. And then we've got 2 screws here. And we're just going to do a little bead of oil to work in there. And I'll cinch these down like so. Okay. So now we're going to put that off to the side just for a moment. We're going to have a quick look at our rotor here. And I'm noticing there is some sand and some debris. That's pretty typical of really any fishing reel. So you want to make sure you get all that out of there. Okay, and then we're going to go with our Real-X here on the bail lever here. Okay, see it's got that fork that comes out there. And traditionally, you shouldn't have to take apart the bail assembly unless it's bent or broke or something like that, but we're just going to do a little bit of Real-X on the bail seams here and let that work its way in there. Okay, and that'll work its way into where the spring is and whatnot. So We're going to slap this back on like so. And then we've got a rotor nut, 10 mil, that needs to go back on. So we'll get that in there. I'll tighten that up gently, but don't over tighten it. There's no need to, because you've got this retainer here that's going to keep it in line. Like so. We've got this little set screw to keep that in position. Okay. So I'm just going to do just another little bead of oil right there where we were talking about earlier before we go to put the rest of these pieces and parts back in there. So now we're ready to have a look at our drive shaft here, our main drive shaft. So we've taken some 4.0 steel wool to this. We've cleaned it up the best we can. A little blue grease on there, like so. Try to avoid getting it down here at the base. Just try to keep it up here. There's no need for it to be down there, because that's going to go straight into your drag stack, really. So it's fine. It'll all seep down just, from gravity alone. So you don't need to load up a bunch of it down there. Okay, now we're going to get this started here. And then we're also going to do some blue grease down here in the bottom of the housing where our block is going to rest and ride here. And we're just going to do a little bit of blue grease here on the point where our cam is going to line up. Okay, so now we're ready to slide this down gently. And then we have those two retainer springs that we need to put back into place here. And they're really, really small, and they can be a real headache sometimes. So just because they're so small and difficult to work with, you don't want to lose them. Okay, and a lot of the time what I find myself doing is I'll just try to cinch it down with my fingertip if I can, and then I'll try to take just a regular flat bladed screwdriver such as this and just gently push down. It should snap right in without too much trouble. And then do the same with the other. A little snap. Okay. And before I get too far ahead, I also want to double check the line guide roller here and just make sure that this is clean. Just take a paper towel and just clean that surface off best that we can. Just take a little bead of oil to that. Slap that back on. A little bit of Real X oil on that thread, on that screw thread. And we'll put that back together as well. Okay. So now the main gear, we've cleaned it up. We've taken some 4.0 steel wool to the shaft here, and we're just going to do a little bit of that grease on the teeth here. It's going to work its way around, so you don't need to overdo it. Okay, just enough to get around. Okay, and we're going to snap that back down into place like so. Okay, and then we'll go back on top here with a little bit of blue grease. Our cam, and then we'll hit that on top with a little bit of blue grease as well. All right, and then we've got what appears to be 3 thin washers here. They're really hard to see, but there's 3 of them. Okay, you want to clean those up, put those back on. All right, and then we've got our metal bushing. Okay, is all that is. Now, don't forget, before you put your plate back on, you need to have your clicker tongue in place. Okay, and we're going to have a look at that right now. Line this up with 0, or close to 0. 1 is also okay. In this case, I think that's what we're going to have to work with, and that's all right. Just judging from where the tab is, the stopping tab on here, that's okay. All right, we've cleaned up our side plate here the best that we can. Looks like it's in pretty good shape. Put that back. And then we've got 3 screws, 2 longer ones and a shorter one at the bottom. And we've been soaking these with some WD-40. And we'll tighten these up. Okay, and then we'll have a look at our handle here. Just clean it up a little bit of blue grease there, real simple. And I'm just going to take just a little bit of Real X, that right there. Okay, and just a little bead on these threads here. And don't forget that you got a nylon washer here, or there should be a nylon washer. If there isn't, you might try to see if you can find one. You know, nylon washers like that are not hard to find usually. You can find them at hardware stores typically. Okay, and put our cap back on, and we'll finish off with just doing a little dab of blue grease here on the top of the shaft there, so we can snap our spool in. And we're going to give it a spin here. We're going to see how this works. Looks like the anti-reverse is working good. Nice and smooth, as it should be. And then check our bail, make sure the bail is firing good. It sure is. And then we've got our drag. Just want to tighten that up, make sure that that's working good. Yeah, that's working great. Make sure you loosen it up when you're not using the reel, so it doesn't take any memory. And there you have it. That is the Shimano Custom X1000 Ultralight Special spinning reel, all serviced up and ready to go. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please do subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification button. That way you will be getting updates as to when there are new videos coming out. And we'll be seeing you next time.